Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the King CJ Music Podcast, where we talk music, hip hop culture, and so much more. So let's have this conversation because I really do want to have this conversation. But the issue with having this conversation is that there's some bias. So as I spoke in my earlier episode last week, we talked about the original diss track from Skepta. Skepta's a UK artist. He's one of the founders of UK Grime. And for a lot of people, they don't like grime. They also don't like hip hop. So what's interesting to me of the standpoint of him saying he wanted to battle any UK, US artists, and we get Joyner. Now, Joyner released an album in which let's be fair, I think the album's okay. It's not the first one. It's not ADHD 1 where we have that Rorschach test. Like, it's not that psychological. It's very, it's very, it's more of a homage album to Eminem. Right, and that's not a yeah that's I listened to it twice. I listened to the album from the cover twice, so it's a fair assumption that there's essentially an argument that could be made about this, and I think that argument consists on like the reader plans. But anyway, we're here to talk about this idea that it's the UK versus the US, part two, which I don't know. I find it interesting. I really do, for like multiple different standpoints, because there's an argument, and so let's be clear. There's an argument to be made that people can't understand UK grime and UK grime, and this is what I always knew the issue was going to be versus Joyner versus Skepta, right? Versus Skepta. I think this was the argument essentially lies in this question of if you can argue that for some point of reason that there can be another artist or this idea of another artist cannot replicate what this artist is doing, which, as I said, I find difficult because that's a difficult conversation to have and prove. Or it's just a weird argument, right? Because there's a lot of things that people don't get about UK grime, where it's mostly like punchlines, and to be fair, I mean, okay, let me. How can I start this argument in a more fair way? Okay, so the UK versus UK rap, the US versus UK rap, and we're gonna talk about the Skepta track because I think Skepta's round two is something that I do enjoy, right? But his first shot at Jordan, I said this before, I thought it was bait. I really truly thought the track was bait, and to be fair, it seems that it was because he confirmed that it was bait. He takes a few punchlines and says that he's Harvard, and we can get to that breakdown where it's Harvard versus Cambridge, right? Like we can talk to that conversation, right, of who has a better school, who's lyrically better, and we can talk about who's scholarly has more scholarly research, and that'd be interesting conversation to have. But this essentially that's what it's gonna come down to: who speaks better for the American artist, or who speaks better to the audience that they're pandering to, or necessarily trying to answer to in this regard. The problem simply lies in that the fact that American artists only care about American rap. And so my biggest critique that I knew Skepta was going to have to deal with is trying to get that American audience. No diss to Big Smoke, but Big Smoke has a very thick accent to me, right? I can understand it because I listen to artists like Little Sims, Stormzy. I've listened Gets, I've listened to my fair take of UK artists, but that's not essentially the whole American audience. And to be fair, I think mostly because we've heard from Wiley, we've heard from a lot of we've heard from Ambush, which I didn't think we were going to hear from Ambush. We heard from Ambush. A lot of people didn't want Skepta to represent the UK because I think people, when they think of UK hip hop, and which it is the newer, it's I want to say 150 years young, right? we have this conversation because in American rap they hate UK drill, and UK grime is the same thing as UK drill. They're very similar. They're very similar to battle rap, right? There are different ways that battle rappers, UK American battle rappers, deal with beefs versus how a UK drill person may deal with beefs, and where it does get a little physical, right? And so a lot of people are equating UK hip hop to UK grime. And you take it, grime is not a problem. I think if you get JME in here, you get somebody of the scene, which I don't really care who you get. I think Gets would be a legend to like enter this. And if he doesn't enter this, I truly understand. But you have to understand that it would take a lot for to get Gets to rap. A lot. It would get a lot for him to like physically get in the ring with somebody. I think it would take a lot. At the 2024, he drops uh the purpose or for the purpose, right? I like that album, but a lot of people don't. But like this argument was going to be made that no one cares, and Jordan makes that point in his response to Skepta, and his idea is that no one cares about the UK scene, and he's not top 5 in the top UK. Um, this is the conversation because I'm hearing a lot of people say, well, they're combining UK rap with grime, and that is fair. The American audience, for what I understand, they can't tell the difference because a lot of people say the accent is thick, so no one cares. And so this accent thing, and this is what I'm saying, and this is my biggest gripe, my biggest argument against why Skepta shouldn't have entered. I think Big Smoke can rap. That's without a doubt. I think Skepta can lyrically get down with anybody. I think the response should have came from Dave, Getz, Storms, Wiley. I think it should have came from somebody, or hey, let Lil Sims come at it. Even though she's going through her own issues right now, let it be Lil Sims. I think you have to get somebody that doesn't have such of a thick accent, and which because that's mostly what people are saying. People are like, I can't get over the accent. I can't take you at UK grime seriously because of Skep's accent, and that's a fair point because a lot of American art, and this is the biggest art. This is the biggest way against Skepta is that's the issue, right? That's the biggest issue. His accent is going to be the biggest issue. His delivery is not. His ability to rap, his ability to rhyme on certain things is not the issue here. That's never been the issue. But on the UK flip, on the American side, this is the problem. This is the problem I have with the American side of hip hop because the argument has to be made because this is the argument that the United States has put themselves in when it comes to rap. In any other country, any other version of rap, you can practically say what you want, right? You can highlight those features. I'll use Stormy Little Sims as a more solidified issue, but let's be fair. Skepta's what? I believe he's British Nigerian. He was a DJ, but that doesn't really hurt him, right? That doesn't hurt him. But the response is that no one cares because America is more. The states are more like focused on. I don't want to say ethnicity because that seems weird, but like that one centered identity. I guess that's this situation, right? And I don't mean to make this political, but it's more the fact that if you are from the states, you're American, you're this, and they have that own like inter battle between if you're Afro, if you're black, and this isn't me being like me trying to break it down. But in the UK, it's more widely accepted if you're Nigerian and British, if you're Scottish, and Malaysian, right? It's more acceptable in that country, in that version of rap because it is more intersectionality, which has spanned across a wide span of artistry, right? And the reason I use Stormzy for that idea, or Losum for that idea, is this idea is that they've been able to rock both identities and not have to worry about this idea, and Skepta doesn't have to worry about it. He didn't worry about it when he was a DJ. But when you try to reach this American audience, you have to claim like one side of yourself or one identity, and that's the biggest issue because the Americans are not, or people from the States are not going to understand that you can be Nigerian and British and still kind of battle those, wear those, show support and show and be proud of both cultures, right? And we seen it on we seen it in Lil Sim's album, we seen it in Stormy's response, we seen it in um Her President is Black off that Stormzy's album. Um This Is What I Mean, which kind of shows the similarities between being British but also the Kingdom with Dave. It's layered, right? Lil Sim's with Woman. And so we get to this point and people are like, well, this is my biggest argument about this conversation. People are like, oh, he's the founder, but he's not top five, and they're like, well, he's not top five. He's top five, right? He's not top five in his coast, and that's fine, right? But the issue that reflects is the same issue that reflects Skepta is Joyner. I don't think you're in anybody's top five, right? And that's the issue because if we go top five currently, I got JID, I got Reason, I got Kaz, I got Reason, Kaz, JID. I don't who I don't know, because Mathematics I think is in between. He's a battle rapper. I don't know, but I don't think it is as clear cut as you think it is, right? If we go top five up and coming rappers or top five rappers of that coast, um, let's go New York down and then let's go to California. But if we go New York down, no specific order. Joey Badass. We go Lotus Lux. I'm saying in New York for Lotus Lux. Lotus Lux. T.I., Lil Wayne, Rick Ross. Yeah, it's not many people that I can think of that you think you're better than in being in the top five. Even if I take T.I. out, put Ludacris or Future for Atlanta, and do Lil Wayne for Florida. Even Hurricane Chris. We go to California. Let's go to California. The Game, Ice Cube. Yeah, The Game, Ice Cube. Or if we take Cube out, it'll be Jay Electronica, Schoolboy Q. Kendrick. Who still raps? Snoop Dogg, right? Like it's hard to say he's not top five in his coast, but I don't think you're top five in anyone's coast here, right? Because of all times, I'm going Black Thought, Rakim, Lotus Lux, um, Murder Mook, Pet Stay. Like that's like if we talk battle rapper, we talk like that. I think that's cool. If you go to Canada, it's The Weeknd, Party Next Door, Drake, Tory. And I'm missing one. Right, it's very hard. Like I don't know if the argument holds well. Even though in my top five, even Joyner says go if want to feature go to Dave, and that's cool. But I don't necessarily I don't know. Like that track hits, but it doesn't hit well when you look at it because a lot of people are like, well, he doesn't know he's the founder, and no one that's fine. But Skepta's done tracks with a lot of people in the states, and that's also true for Dave. That's also true for Stormzy. That's also true for Little Sims. Uh, like that's the issue. You run this issue of if you're talking about rappers. I mean, Wiley may not, Getz may not. I can't think of Getz right off the top of the hand, but even in Mount Rushmore, he salutes people like 50 Cent. He salutes people like TLC. So like this is the conversation, and if you don't know, if you if you don't know um, UK's history, then you don't give bigs ups to Derek B, who founded UK rap 50 years ago, and then Skepta was one of those founders, right? So this is like the conversation that needs to be had because like I said, no one cares about it, but no one's speaking facts, right? And so this is the conversation of which I do like. I like having these conversations. But this conversation falls flat because you're not telling the truth. And to American artisans, that might sound cool. Oh, he's not top five in his coast. But is Joyner? I don't think Jordan Lucas is top five. He says he's never heard anyone say put Skepta. So I put it on. I put Gets on. I put Storm. I put people on the Storms. I put people on the Little Sims. Um, right, I've done it. I've Skepta somewhere on my phone too. Right before round two, I've Skepta on my phone. Right, but like this is a conversation that needs to be had because they're like, well, I don't understand, and that's true. But what I'm looking at is confirmation bias. Like, oh, he killed him because he's not top five in his coast. Joyner's not. And then he says, even though you're close with Drizzy, and that's fine if we go off with a More Life, and More Life has Skepta's interlude one, but that's fine. But I'm not like that's bold. Um, that's a bold argument to be made because you were on Eminem's album. So like it's cool, but like I like Kamikaze, but I forgot. I really forgot you were on it. But now that I'm thinking, yeah, you're on Kamikaze. So like it's concerning, and Skepta in round two is concerning because simply talks about this idea that he's a throwaway that people are neglecting. Yes, Jordan can rap. That's not the issue here. Jordan can rap. That's fine. But versus Don Q and Tory, I mean, he wasn't that impressive. And right, and he can say that as a criticism, and that's fine. I can criticize any rapper or any diss I've ever heard. That being Don Q, that being Tory Lanez, right? I could argue pros and cons for both. Jordan can rap, and and be fair, I think he's right because I'm not racist. The suicide hotline thing that he did with Logic, or was that Logic? Was that even Logic? But like, and then this Eminem thing he did where he's more like giving homage to Eminem. He's not like Skepta's not wrong, but I have yet to hear a verse. Like these diss tracks are taking so long to drop. It's like, hey, can you drop? And I get it. It's a time difference of what 12 hours, maybe more. But like it's a conversation that needs to be had. But I do really wish artists really get in here and like talk about this conversation. Um, because I think Shut Down or Energy are one of the best songs in grime culture I've heard from Skepta, right? So, uh, and so, like, I think this is interesting, but I don't necessarily know, right? And you could argue that they're tight, but they've been tight since 2016 when Drake was allegedly supposed to sign with Skepta's label. Um, like this is the conversation. If you want to take a shot at Skepta, say, "Hey, you relied too much on Drake," and that's cool, but you got to make that sound like a bar and flip it, right? Because your time is over because you were too close with Drake or something like that. Make it clever, make it slick. Like the first round was a tie. Second round could be slightly in Skepta's flavor. Because round two is not bad. It's just not. It's not defensive. It's not as grimy as I would like it. Like there's punches. Like I don't beat women. That Tory line was interesting, but it's not like a heavy punch. he's being neglected, which he may be because his albums have what at least 4 or 5 years apart, which that's typical, but it's weird for an artist that's hot to wait that long between albums. So I get that logic of it, but like at the same time, what is he like? These raps are good, but it's the first round was a tie. If I'm being fair, because they're both bait tracks. Um, and I want to say I want to say Skepta wins this round, but I'm still waiting for Joyner to reply, which I don't think Joyner will. But if I'm Joyner, I'm gonna reply because I need to reply. Um, let's think. Who else? Skepta, Joyner. Yeah, I don't know. If I'm somebody who do I need to reply? Somebody needs to reply to Skepta's response, and I don't know who it will be. Uh, I mean, if Jordan wants to be funny, leak that picture. If that's your angle for your next diss track, I would drop the angle and say, well, he was wearing the dress. But as I said, that's rumor. So if you have the proof, drop it and then make a diss track or make that the cover art. But I don't necessarily see that happening anytime soon because no one's gonna push that um, unless they have proof that's verified. Because people are starting to realize that defamation is a real thing. Um, But let's talk. I think this clips thing of him saying he has lost. Let's talk. While we're talking about this, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this whole week of hip hop. Let's talk about this idea, right? That and Travis Scott did what I thought he was going to do. He was going to let it blow over, and it does, right? But he essentially said, they're not that different in age, but that's why that line doesn't relate with me well. But he talks about he lost all respect for Travis because Travis cried in front of his face. Which, let's be fair, if I mean, let people show emotions. Like it's not, it was at one point cool to like bottle up emotions, but at a certain point, we have to set an example to where people can show emotions. And he says it's because he like stepped on something in the studio when he was in Paris and he didn't like he thought that was disrespectful, and that's fine, right? So that's fine. I think that's cool. But Travis Line says that he doesn't want people like older generations, and I mean that's true though, because the evidence is there. More people do a lot of like rave music compared to conscious rap music. A lot of people don't buy like conscious rap or like that. Each album is going to do good by themselves, and we're seeing that up here, apparent there. It's not anything phenomenal. What's the next topic? Let's talk about DC and let's talk about and DC and Rick Ross. It's interesting to me, right? And I'll say this. Normally, when I do or like host like guests, it'll probably be too soon, right? So there won't be like if somebody leaves, that's fine. That's we won't have that conversation because that's fine. Something happened. I'm cool with it. Um, but we're seeing clips of DC and Rick Ross trying to invite each other to um, his pool party to have a conversation because he felt like he was slighted. Um, and I get it. There are some people when you do interviews in this space that people will pay to have these guests work. Right? And I get it. 85 from South, which I think is an interesting podcast to listen to. It has Chico being DC and Fly and is it Carlos? I listen to audio, so I apologize. Um, but it's a funny podcast to listen to. And this doesn't mean necessarily plugging them for the audience that I have, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. Um, because we can talk about uh, paying guests because some podcasts do pay guests. Typically we have conversations that we talk before we even get to that stage. Um, or like me bringing on a guest and just have a conversation. It's typically how I do it. We have a conversation, we talk, we go through things, and we do stuff like that. Before we even get to that like stage of having somebody on, you'll probably see me vet them and we'll have a conversation and making sure this is legit and offers like this because I do a lot of research on my end before we even get to that stage of hey, I want to do an interview and I may not get interviews like I want, but there are a bunch of steps to that, right? There aren't steps where we're like, hey, You know, there aren't steps where like, hey, we're not going to respond to them because that doesn't necessarily is in our favor, right? I'm never going to do that, right? But it's ish, and I guess his issue with it essentially is it was like he came in there for free, and yes, I get it. Time is free, and so time isn't necessarily free. Some people have to pay for time, right? And so you want to make these slots so where people can like have fun and listen to your podcast. That's why I kind of do mine in like short, like 30-minute episodes, right? I'll go to an hour, but it has to be a very topic that I enjoy, um, or it has to be like a flowing conversation. Um, but when you hear him talk about it, he says that it was simply a free thing, so he showed up and left when he wanted to, and well, all right, he's fine too. Um, but in some journalism spots, and I get it, when you're doing podcasts or things like this, and you have a guest on it, to some people it can feel a certain way if you planned a deep episode around a person's interview, and it doesn't happen, or they leave early, and you're like, well, I have 30 minutes of clips. What necessarily can I put out? What necessarily can I do with these 30 minutes, and how can I make them entertaining? And for a lot of people, they're like, "Well, we'll just scrap the project," which I think you can scrap a project, but you have to be aware that if they ask you, "Are you going to publish it?" You might just have to publish it. But that is like what you and your teams have to decide that. Um, but there's not always that same respect shown. There's not that same respect shown to some content creators, and that's fine. People can choose what they want to do. Um, and if the guy's paid Rick Ross, maybe he thought he wanted to pay them, and he thought the money was good. That's always a concern when you do podcasts like this. It's always a concern that you may have a guest that wants to pay or wants you to pay, and that's not. And I mean that's fine. I don't know how they do it, but normally I typically try to reach out, and we have these conversations before I do these interviews and talk to people, because I think having these conversations um, are something that if you don't have these conversations, it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's not a bad thing either. But you kind of need to be upfront about these conversations before we go into recording or we go into post edit. But any guest that I like do a podcast with, you'll have time. I won't even put it out probably a week or two to after, and then you'll get all the approvals on your side. I'll get the approvals on my side, and we'll go from there. But it's always interesting, right? Because essentially, Rick Ross is like he showed up for free. He showed up with his own time because he wanted to, and then left because he wanted to. Um, but it's I think at a certain point though, I think DC took it as respect, and it's not a bad thing, but it shows somebody's character of why won't they step out here and show you a little bit more. Um, it's interesting because when you do these kind of things, you're never aware of what the conversation can lead to. But like if you had to post at the front stage and you have these conversations, hey, we need you for 30 minutes just to have a conversation. It won't be a long episode. It won't even be sponsored. This, that, and this. You can only rock an episode. It can necessarily go smooth. You'll have some hiccups, but in my experience, when I've had stuff like that, it hasn't been a hiccup. It's always been great. Um, Yeah, it's a hit or miss, but it's also how well you and your guests like communicate. Um, it's not really a plug because I'm on the show, but like Thursday Night Thoughts, when we have guests, the host Jalen, he has this coordination where he makes sure that everyone's okay with it, but also sends that guest an invite a couple days before, right? So it's always interesting how when people say they have issues with guests because it's like hopefully everything's talked in a pre-case and numbers line up to what they need to be. Um, but it's not always the case. And sometimes host or like guests fall through, which is understandable. Things happen. Um, so it's always interesting, right? Because you have these conversations and you're like, well, why don't you have these conversations with somebody that wants to do these episodes? Uh, yeah. But that being said, though, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. I think we talked a lot about like beef, but also confirmation bias that a lot of people show and don't realize it, especially like against accents or how a whole genre of people sound compared to what they're used to. It's interesting. I might actually like deep dive into it next week and just like focus into that. What that being said, though, I hope you enjoyed this episode.